team! How are we getting on? What's happening? I've been on a lot of planes recently. Not a joke, just a fact. Come down here a wee bit, you're a bit high up. What the hell are you doing being so high up compared to me? Don't like that. You know I can't go anywhere without dragging some sort of archaeology or history into it. Obviously, that's why you're all here. To cut to the chase, there is an ancient burial ground underneath Edinburgh Airport that nobody really seems to give a fuck about. Except me, obviously. And it is marked by a massive stone called the Cat Stane, which is the only bit that's still visible and you can actually see it from the runway. Not that I've actually seen it though. Every time I've been on a plane, I've had my head at the window like a dog. And I've always been looking the wrong way, or the planes went the wrong way, so I've still not managed to see it. But thousands of people fly over it every day and have absolutely no clue. I don't even know if there's like a plaque in the airport or something that actually memorialises it. I haven't seen a single thing, right? Not at all. Which is why today I'm educating you all about it, because this is kind of a big deal, don't you think? So anyway, like and subscribe and ring the bell, and let's find out more about this massive stone and the burial ground beneath it. We trigger warning, we content warning before we start. There will be images of partial human remains in this video, so if that's not for you, go and watch this instead. Not huge, it's very, very little bits, but just in case you didn't like it. Okay, let's go. The Cat Stane is a massive stone sitting on the north side of the runway at Edinburgh Airport. Luckily for us, the stone and the cemetery below it are scheduled monuments. A scheduled monument means that a site or object, whatever, is of national archaeological or historical importance. Therefore, it's legally protected from damage or development in the area, stuff like that, which is very good considering ours is an airport.
I'm not being funny, Stacey, but you want to get a life. What you said just now was really boring.
We don't know exactly when it was put into place, but the stone was possibly first put there in the Bronze Age, so like 2000 BC. Really, really class stuff here, by the way. We pretty much know nothing about the people inhabiting Scotland here at this time. We can assume that it would have been an early form of the tribes first documented by the ancient Romans when they arrived on the island, jumping way forward to AD 43. However, remember we're talking like 2,000 years before that. If we're talking about the same tribal system that the Romans were working with and that Ptolemy suggested in his map, then this area at the time would have been controlled by the Votadini tribe. The main seat of power for that tribe being the hill fort at the top of Castle Rock, where Edinburgh Castle now sits. If you want to know a bit more about that though, check out my video on Ptolemy's silly little map of Scotland. Anyway, back to the stone. There's an inscription on it. Whoa, yes! It says, and I'm not reading out the Latin because I'm not going to make a fool of myself. In this tomb, or in this mound, lies Veta, daughter of Victricus. Veta seems to be a very British name, proper British name. I don't like using the B word when it comes to old archaeological ancient stuff because what we perceive as Britain was not the same back then, you know what I mean? It's just one of those words that has a lot of connotations that don't apply to them. No other record of this woman exists that we know of, or her dad, but we can assume that maybe both of them, but definitely her, would have been buried in the area around the stone somewhere. Otherwise, why would you put her name on it and say that she's there? You know what I mean? Why would you lie? But the stone acts as a marker for the entire cemetery around it, which dates to the first millennium AD/CE, whatever you want to call it. Early drawings and early accounts of the Cat Stane and the surrounding area suggest that there was a cairn here, a full-on cairn. Isn't that magic? And our Cat Stane would have been on the outer edge of the curbstones, on the outside. I'll chuck in some pictures of other cairns around the world. For example, Newgrange is, you know, the biggie. So there might have been a mound and further older graves within the cairn. What the hell? The stone was first recorded in 1699 by Welsh explorer and archaeologist Edward Lloyd. Shout out to my lovely, lovely friend Mars for helping me with my Welsh pronunciations and spellings, thank you. The Cat Stane itself, the big rock, was found to have been on a bed of much smaller stones, which were at first thought to be Veta's own little kissed grave, but of course the weight of that massive stone on top is kind of mushed. There's no human remains or objects beneath it, so they don't know if it was actually her grave directly beneath the stone that's maybe been robbed in antiquity at some point, or if it was just a sort of flat basis for the big Cat Stane to sit on top of. We don't know, because Edward Lloyd didn't bloody know either. And there's been multiple eras of excavation going on at the site from about 1860 all the way up until the 1970s, and I don't believe they've touched it since because, hey, there's airplanes there. In the 70s, I believe it was more of a rescue archaeology mission, which is when if a site is under threat or something, they'll send an archaeologist to find out as much as they can about the area before it like falls into the sea or it's destroyed or if it's built over, that sort of thing. But I believe the plan was to originally move the stone somewhere else so it was out of the way of the airport, but I think they ended up just leaving it where it was. Whatever the reason, it's still there, so catch it when you look out the window on your little planes. So about the big massive gravesite around it then. They actually managed to do some radiocarbon dating on some samples and found that these graves date to the late 5th, early 7th century AD, CE, we're out at the BCs now, which is the sort of early medieval period in Scotland. Early Christianity is beginning to form. Maybe Veta was related to somebody in the... That's another point for another time, Christ. And it's a cemetery filled with kissed graves, or cist graves, some people call them. Some people spell it with a C. I think in Scotland it's more common to spell it with a K. I don't know, I've always spelt it with a K, but that's also because I can't spell. And a kiss grave is essentially a grave in the ground that's a sort of pit lined with stone slabs at the side, and then you'll put the human remains and their funerary objects in the pit and put a slab over the top of it. About 52 of these graves were found in the 70s. Because of the nature of the excavation being rescue archaeology, they didn't get to look at all the area, they just had to focus on their primary focus around the stone. But 14 of those graves were left unopened and not excavated, which is incredible, because who bloody knows what's inside of those ones, but they didn't have time to do it in the 70s. Lots of these graves were disturbed in antiquity, so they were empty, but the stones at least were still in place, so you could see roughly where each person would have been. There's thought to be in the area at least 80 graves in total, but again, because of the limited scope of the excavation, they didn't go round digging up the bloody runway to see what lies beneath, did they? Also, previous excavations in the area, surprise, surprise, were not done very well, so they've probably mucked up a lot of the evidence that we could have seen, but early archaeologists were not the most... they were thorough, but they didn't have like strict rules the same way that we do now when it comes to actually digging stuff up. So they made a mess of it. Unfortunately, the preservation of the human remains that were still there is actually pretty poor. Scottish soil is notoriously acidic, so getting certain materials to survive long enough in it is pretty shit, actually, for most organic materials. However, here we go, we're getting into the geology side of things. The human remains found in the shale-lined graves survived better than the ones in the sandstone graves. I'm not a geologist. I don't know what the hell the reasoning for that is for. It's bloody magic to me. Most of the skeletal remains found were fully extended with their heads turned to thy west. Straightforward way to put your deceased, obviously. Straightforward, and they were lying out straight. Haha. It's not a funny joke, it's just an observation, isn't it? God. Apparently there was 4 complete skulls found, and one of them was actually taken away for investigation to the National Museum of Scotland. However, I cannot find any more information about that from the National Museum of Scotland or from Historic Environment Scotland either. So don't know what's up with that. Don't know where that one's went. I would like to find out. I'd like to see it, please. Give it. But because there's so little skeletal evidence, we cannot tell anything about the individuals in these graves. Typical. We can't do our usual scientific ASL of these skeletons. As I also just said, the materials of the actual graves is different as well. Again, we don't know why. Could have been one was more expensive than the other, or they just used what they had around them. I don't believe any geological samples were taken to find out like where the shale or where the sandstone specifically came from, but also Edinburgh, the Lothians and the Fife is a very sandstone heavy area, so it could be bloody anywhere. Really, not surprised. But also the shapes of the kiss graves are ever so slightly different. The sandstone ones tend to be more rectangular blocks. Some of them are sort of wider at the head and then thinner as you go down towards the feet. And some were in even a more traditional coffin shape, as we would call it today, with the sort of out at the shoulders, in by the feet sort of vibe. And the graves, as you're sort of closer to the stone, are larger and more varied in shape than the ones further away. So ones closer to the stone, maybe they're earlier and they're more varied, and then you get more standardised as you use up the grave space. Just a thought, probably, could be. Again, we don't have any dates to fully confirm or deny that. That's just me talking out my arse. I don't think there'd be too much significance in the difference of stones or slabs used. They'll just have whatever's available. I don't think it's going to be like the shale ones were all the rich people and then the sandstone ones were all it's probably not that big of a deal. They were probably just using whatever they had around them. But it's worth mentioning that there is variation in material and size and shape and stuff, just in case it is an indicator of slightly changing trends or more regularity coming into the burial practice, or maybe it does have a significant statement to say about the person inside it, just we can't tell because we don't bloody know who's inside it because they're gone now. Who knows, guys? Who knows anything ever? Also, the eastern edge of the gravesite follows I learned a new word when I was doing my reading the other day, by the way, curvilinear. I hardly bloody know her. So a sort of boundary on the eastern side that curves, which most likely suggests that this was like a fence or a wall of some sort. That would have been the boundary of the far eastern side of the cemetery. Curvilinear. What a good word! But that boundary, whether it was a fence or a wall or a mound, doesn't exist anymore. Would have just been to keep the beasties out and to sort of mark the boundary of the gravesite. Much like walls work today. What the hell? They were so ahead of their time. What shall we kerfuffle about then? Some sources I've read translate the cat stane as the battle stone in Gaelic or Scots or something, suggesting perhaps the stone marks the site of a significant battle in the past, or it's the grave site of those who died in the battle. There's not enough physical or skeletal evidence left behind to confirm this at the moment, but it's also not extensively mentioned in all the reading that I've done, so I just thought I'd mention it and just chuck it out there and see what yous think. If you think that's the case, tell me yes or no. Not only is this cemetery important because of its existence, but also its abandonment can tell us absolutely loads. Research suggests that maybe it's something to do with the establishment of early parishes, how the grave sites would then become more local to the area where the people actually lived. If you think of your local church with your graves around it and all that. The establishment of such areas was due to a massive shift in power. Oh my god. In the 7th century, the sort of Central Belt area, or at least the Edinburgh side of the Central Belt area, became part of Northumbria. I don't know loads about that specifically. That's another video for another time. I'd love to look into that. But we're really doing nothing to beat the Edinburgh is English claims, are we? Oh, ouch.
Edinburgh isn't Scotland. I've got nothing against the English, but Edinburgh isn't Scotland. Edinburgh is England.
Tale as old as time. If there's a massive shift in power, that usually means a massive shift in social trends, political trends. Very seldom in history do we see a massive shift in power happen and whoever's newly in charge goes, yeah, just keep behaving the way you were before. That's absolutely grand. We're going to establish no changes in your societal structure. We're just going to let you keep going the same. Usually they change something to establish their dominance and power over the area. So the abandonment of the cat stane in the 7th century actually does coincide with this Northumbrian takeover of the area. So we can assume that something happened to change the burial practices, or at least where the burials were happening. Or maybe it was just that cemetery got too full, which also coincided with this new trend, and they were like, we'll just bugger off somewhere else and bury our grannies elsewhere, shall we? So the cat stane originally marked the Bronze Age burial site, with mound included. We assume at some point that was abandoned, and then the early Christian people came along and went, we're going to be having that, by the way. And then at the start of the 7th century, they were like, let's go do something else, somewhere else, maybe a wee bit closer to home, so we're not dragging bodies to the airport. The airport wasn't there. Did I mention that at the start? The airport wasn't there when the cemetery was first established, by the way. Also, our cat stane does have a very solid statement of significance as why it's so important and why it's a scheduled monument. So I'll highlight some points from the statement of significance for you now. The inscription on the stone, of course, dating back to the sort of early medieval, early Christian period, is in great nick. They don't think it's weathering away fast enough to be concerned about it, which is a very good thing. Not only is it evidence for writing in this period, it's evidence for writing and literacy at this point where we don't have much other evidence for it, really. This is a very, I don't want to say a dark time, that's not what I mean, but we just don't have much evidence for this period. Especially the literacy of the actual people. You know, most people could not read and write. But this is evidence that, it was there. And it's in bloody Latin, of all things. So it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. Of course, being smack bang under the airport means that future excavation is somewhat unlikely, unfortunately. Even though it is on the, it's way in the back corner. It's out the way enough that you could maybe let someone in to excavate it. But the thought is those at least 14 unopened burials should be in good nick. So if we were ever to get in and safely excavate that area, who knows how much information we could learn. Because a lot of the ones, I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier, a lot of the ones that are unopened are actually shale graves. The likelihood of the bones and stuff being preserved is of a higher chance than that of the sandstone ones. Isn't that exciting? Even if there's not bones inside them, the funerary objects alone could tell us loads about the people inside, what their sort of jobs were, what their social status was, that sort of thing. But if there is bones inside, we could learn about cause of death, we could learn age, we could learn sex of the person. Gender's a bit different because you can't always tell that through the bones and the material goods. But if there's teeth, we can track their movements across the globe. We can learn so much from skeletal evidence. It's absolutely amazing. I wish I paid more attention in osteoarchaeology classes because it's actually really cool. But then the idea of being in a lab really scared me. It was a bit too daunting, so I didn't do it. So fingers crossed there's some bones in there that one day some little lucky archaeologist will get to uncover. Who up kissed in they bones right now? Who up boning they kissed? Right, stop it. It's not always worth it, guys, to make the joke, okay? But also, again, it's quite annoying that the excavations prior to the ones in the 1970s, lo and behold, early archaeologists made a mess of the place. So the information we've currently got, it's a bit muddled up, especially contextual evidence of where the objects were specifically found and stuff, but a lot of them were also looted in antiquity, so long before anyone excavated them the stuff was taken out, so people clearly knew that the graves were there. Significance wise, this site has so much more to tell us in the future when the airport are ready to let us in.
Let me in. Let me in, please. I said.
So in conclusion, the cat stane is not just a pretty stone that sits next to the runway for you to take photos of. No! It encapsulates a very special time in Scottish history and prehistory when a major shift was happening in the wider society, but we don't actually have much evidence for it surviving. Not just the shift, but the changes as a whole. Going from these early tribes, if the Bronze Age site is to be believed with the Votadini and stuff like that, into this shift into early Christian, early medieval, you get your Scottish kings and all that coming in. It's class. Due to the nature of the site, we obviously don't know enough about the people to actually say exactly who they were or what sort of people they were from or this, that and the other, but there is so much potential there in that site to learn more, which is absolutely astounding. Because usually the stuff I talk to you about, it's all been dug up and they've learned everything from it, and there's a few wee gaps here and there, but they're like, this is it. It's exciting, isn't it? It's so exciting. But you need to tell the airport to take a day off to go and have a look, which I really don't think they're going to do. So Edinburgh Airport, if you're watching, please, can you let us sit just for a little day or two, just to have a little look? So next time you're flying in or out of Edinburgh Airport, whether you're taking off or landing, stick your head out the window, buy yourself a wee teeny tiny overpriced can of juice and pour one out for the dead homies. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions or any comments or anything like that, please pop them down in the comment box below. Don't forget to hit the like button if you liked it. Even if you didn't like it, who cares? Hit the like button anyway. Life's just short. And also hit the subscribe button as well. It's completely free and means you get to see my face a lot more, which brightens everyone's day. All of my bibliography and further reading and such will be in the description box below. But other than that, tatty bye. And I shall see you all next Tuesday.